everyone, Jess here from the Scrappy Sisters. So in this layout, I have actually created my own little cut file here. It is this super cute picture of a digger or an excavator, and I wanted to use this specifically because that's the theme I used when I made my little man's birthday cake. So I jumped onto my Silhouette Cameo design studio thingy-majiggy and whipped this up. Yes, so now I am thinking about backing the cut files. So I've just pulled into my scraps because I want to use a little bit of grey for the wheels down there. And so basically I do keep scraps. I keep them in 5 different colours of these 12x12 pockets. There's a clear one that I use for black and white scraps, and grey and all of that in between. There's a red one, a blue one, a green one, and a yellow one, I think. And basically I just put the different shades that go with those. So the shades of green, the shades of blue, the shades of red and pink, the shades of orange and yellow, into the 5 different homes there. And yeah, I just pull those out as needed. To be honest, not very often. I find scraps really tricky. So I try my darndest to not have too many scraps where possible, because I do find that I don't dig those out very often. Now, I kept the whole process here of backing this cut file because I know there have been a few people that ask the best way to do it, and it really, really, really depends on the size of your cut file. So this one is quite an easy one to trim around and back. So I'm just doing the old glue on the cut file and pop it straight onto a larger piece of paper. You can see there that I've pulled the middle section and I'm using that to show me where the circles need to go on the wheels of the excavator. I could totally just guess and just place them out as close as I can, but I really liked the idea of them being evenly spaced, and it wasn't too tricky to put the cut file back together again, so to speak, and lay the circles in the correct positioning there. And I was really happy. They look really nice, evenly spaced now, and I thought that that was pretty cool. So originally I was just going to leave that to dry and just let it do its thing. But then I decided, I'll just cut it out straight away. It's not really too wet. It's not moving too much. So obviously, as I said earlier, the size of this cut file is super, super, super easy to then cut around. So this is sort of my go-to way of backing a cut file. I get larger pieces of paper, whether they're scraps or whether they're cut, little squares cut from a 12x12 pattern piece, and I glue those directly onto the cut file. I then give it a little bit of time to dry, and if it's fiddly, I will use a craft knife, a Stanley knife, and a cutting mat and cut around it. If it's not fiddly, I will get the scissors and cut around with the scissors. So now I'm going to back the whole rest of the cut file here, but I really wanted to be clever about using this paper. I didn't want to waste it, so I actually end up cutting a 4x6 size piece of cardstock because I figured that would be big enough. I sort of tried to measure it out a little bit, and that will be big enough, using my amazing Fiskars guillotine. Highly recommend that. Awesome cutter. And so I'm going to try and see if I can sort of keep the pattern in the pattern paper going in the same direction. I'm not going to stress too much about it because the arm on the digger, on the excavator, is at a different angle to the rest of the machine. I don't want the whole arrows going a completely random different direction, but sort of in the same-ish direction will be fine. So you can see here I'm popping glue directly onto the cut file. And it's just white glue, PVA white glue, the Montmartre, I think it is. I said this before and I always get it wrong. Craft glue. And I'm just going to loosely cut around here, but you can see there, it's sort of in frame. I am cutting so it's not showing up in the next section of the cut file, because I will need to put another piece of paper in the cut file hole of the arm. And so I don't want, so you can see I've cut it flush where the arm meets the main bulk of the machine for where the next piece of cut file is going to go. Now here's another way of doing it as well. I'm taking the middle piece out of that circle and using that as a guide and just cutting like a millimeter bigger all the way around the edge of the circle. So I know when I put glue onto the circle cut file there and then put that piece of circular cutout that I've made, it will fit because I cut it just that millimeter bigger than the hole that came out, than the piece that came out. Just trimming it just a tiny bit because there's a little bit of excess showing on one side. So that's another way you can do it too. You could trace the shape that you're cutting and then just cut it a tiny bit bigger. The reason I don't like to do that as much is you then also need to erase the grey lead mark. And I'm a bit lazy and can't be bothered doing that. So I tend to find gluing it directly onto the cut file and then cutting around it once it's dry works better for me. So there, just placing this next one on. Then I'm going to loosely cut around that again. Oh, there's a little inside dot that I didn't want to lose, so I'm just going to pop that straight on now before it is lost. And so just going to loosely cut around this one again, leaving enough space to put the last little section of arm on. And so this last little section of arm is going to go there in between. And once this is all dry, I'll then get my scissors and cut the excess off the cut file. If there's a lot of overlap hanging off like the underside of the cut file, the part that you can't see, sometimes I'll just leave it there because it doesn't really bother me, and I often pop my cut files up on foam tape anyway. Or I might, because it's not really properly glued down, that excess part, I might cut it off as well, so there's not too much bulk. Now while that is drying, I decided I wanted to use this red for the windows of the excavator, but it's only a branding strip, and when I was having a look at the direction that the windows go, I've realized that I actually need a thicker piece for that big window. It needs to be 2 sections of the branding strip. So I'm just going to double-sided tape that together, just like that. The seam is not too noticeable. It's only a little tiny piece. It's not that big a deal. Just the striking red color is what stands out the most. I could not worry too much about it, but this branding strip itself has got arrows on it, and I thought it would look a little bit funny if the arrows were all going in random directions. I like the idea of keeping the arrows all together in the same direction. So I am just using double-sided tape to stick the 2 sections of the branding strip together, just trying to line up the arrows there where possible, so that they're still in their rows, so they're not like off higgledy-piggledy. And then I will use the same technique of putting glue on the back of that window and sticking it directly onto the red. Again, I do have to be careful, and I do double check this with the piece that came from the inside of the cut file, that I'm not accidentally turning one of the windows around and having it like the wrong direction, as in there's a fat end and a skinny end, and I don't want to have it around the wrong way. And then that can get stuck onto the green inside of the excavator. And again, I'm going to use that inside piece as a guide to make sure I have the 3 windows in the correct spot. So once I've trimmed around that, as I said earlier, I'm going to pull the inside piece of that cut file that would usually be trash, and I am going to use it to make sure I am putting that big window in the correct spot, because I'm a little bit particular about where my things go. I want them to look neat and tidy and placed correctly. So then once I do that, I move on to the next 2 little red windows. And I realised pretty quickly that that bottom window is exactly the same. It needs a double piece of the red. Silly Billy me. So I have to do the same technique with that bottom window, that bottom long rectangle window, and get 2 pieces of the branding strip to make it wide enough. You can also see there I just glued on those 2 little line accents just while I had the inside piece of the excavator cabin on there. I just thought I'd stick those down while they were there so that I could get those in the correct positioning. And my excavator is starting to come together. It's almost done. Now, generally speaking, the cut files are pretty busy and pretty big, and they tend to take away a lot of the need to embellish a layout, I find. They're kind of the highlights part of the layout, having a cut file on here. They take time, they're fiddly, they're still used scrapbooking, but then when it comes to sort of ephemera and things like that, you often don't need too much more to finish off your page, because by the time you put on your cut file, put on your title, and put on your photo, in a lot of cases you can basically be done. So I did actually find embellishing this a little bit of a challenge, because the collection I'm using is the New Day Dear Lizzy collection. That is also the papers that I'm using apart from the grey scrap, and they're really large pieces of ephemera. So I actually found it quite a challenge to choose ephemera pieces that didn't dominate the photos or dominate the page, and therefore take away from the beautiful cut file that I created and the gorgeous photos of my little man. So yeah, bit of a challenge. I actually sent this layout to my sister during the process. She's my sort of go-to when I get stuck. I probably sent her about 20 photos in the process of making this and going, oh, does it look better like this or like this? Or what about this one? Oh, what should I do here? It was, a little bit tricky. I had the basis of my idea down, and I was really happy with the basis of my idea, but actually getting it together took a little bit of fiddling and a little bit of time. So you can see there, while I left the red windows to dry, I cut out the rest of the green excavator and got that all organized. And then I've got my 2 little red windows ready. I chose red just because I thought it was a really nice contrast to the green. Really stands out, almost clashes, that old saying, red and green should never be seen without a colour in between. I liked the clash. I thought it was really blinding for the eye, which sounds dreadful, but to me that's kind of a little bit what this collection is all about. Really bright colours, not blinding for the eye. They look great. But I just wanted to roll with, tired. I just wanted to roll with the brightness and the striking of the colours in this layout. So, excavator is done. So cute. Love it. So, there are my 2 photos up the top there of my gorgeous little man on his birthday with the number 3. And my idea that I'm going for here is that the excavator's taken a big dig, and all the other numbers have been left behind down in that bottom corner, and the number 3 was the number that was collected. So I decided I needed to back my photos, but I didn't really have any coloured cardstock left, and I could totally pull into my stash for coloured cardstock, but when I'm using a kit, I like to try and use as much of the kit as I possibly can without digging too much into my stash. And this is my Feb kit, and I am trying to get 5 layouts out of my Feb kit, so I just want to try and do as much as I possibly can here. So I decided to use the branding strips to back my photos. Now, I was talking before about liking the arrows all going in the same direction. That's not going to be possible by using the branding strip to back the photos, but it's going to be close enough. Because it's just a tiny pop of red, and then I'm also actually going to back those onto white cardstock as well. So I'm just showing you here how I do this first one. I'll do the next one off screen, and I use that dark green branding strip there you can see on top of the pile. So just showing you there how that is going to take place. I basically just cut the branding strip in half so it was super thin, and then popped that around all four sides of my photo. And then I'm going to make sure it's sort of as even and as straight as possible, because I did just cut it with my scissors, and so of course, you know, a bit winky wonky. That totally reminded me of the donkey story. Have you seen the donkey story about there was a donkey and he only had one eye and he was a wonky honky tinky tonky donkey? It's hilarious. There's a YouTube clip of a grandma reading it to her grandson, and I think she's Irish, and she is just in stitches. Well, we got that book given to us when Jack was maybe about 1. And very similar occurrence happened when my husband read it to him at bedtime. All I could hear was my husband just cacking himself with laughter. And I had no clue what was going on because I hadn't read the story. And so I had to go down and check out what was happening. Oh, excuse me again. And yeah, sure enough, he's reading this story to my 1-year-old who, like the baby in the video, has not a clue why Daddy thinks it's so funny. But yeah, Dad's losing himself. Oh, sorry. I accidentally forgot to record. I was in between making dinner and dinner was cooking, and I had a spare 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm just going to have a play, and forgot that I should have been making a video. So I'm just showing you there what I've done off screen. I decided I didn't like the yellow paper because I wanted a mound of dirt, and it was like sand color paper and you couldn't see the dirt very well. So I have put my cut file up on foam, except for that one little strip above the wheels, and I have also hand cut a little mound of dirt from a nice little brown textured piece of paper, and I cut as well a white piece of paper in the same sort of configuration, but I deliberately sort of put them a little bit off so the white sheet of paper doesn't completely go around the outside of the dirt. It just gives it a little bit of, I don't know, of dimension. And then in the New Day collection there was this, I think it said Here and Now ephemera piece, but it had lots of sort of grass and flowers on it, so I just used that to be like, I don't know, extra dirt, extra grass on top of that dirt pile, and then glued all of that down flat with my glue. You could see there I was having a fiddle with the different bits of ephemera. Clearly I'd already pulled those off to the side. Again, something else I'd been doing while waiting for dinner to cook. We're having sausages, so they were on the barbecue literally like 10 steps behind me, and instead of just standing there and watching the sausages cook, I kept walking in and out, in and out, in and out, and having a little play with this sitting on my desk. So unfortunately for you in the video, I'd done sort of the brain work behind this, but you at least will get a bit of an idea of what's happening. I just put a little bit of white crochet cotton into that tag there. I'm a really firm believer that if you've got a tag, it needs to be a tag. So put a piece of string in it. Unless you're like covering up the hole, then that's totally fine. But like if I can actually see that it's a tag, I want a piece of string in it. So that's what I was doing. Cutting up that little piece of ephemera there because I loved having the little flowers stick out the side. Also cutting the frame in half. I find frames really hard to use, so I find sticking them behind to add embellishments is much better. I'm just peeling up the foam just a little bit there because I noticed that the tag was sticking off the page and I don't want it to be. I want to keep that tag, so popping that in under there. I'm just loving all the smashes of bright colour around these gorgeous photos. And then I'm going to put the butterfly there, then onto this side. I love that little decorative piece there on the frame, and I want to make sure that little decorative piece of the pink frame is like on the outside of the photo, not underneath the photo. So I'm putting the ends of the frame under the photo, but I want, that little pointy bit out on the front of the photo just because it's cute. And I figure might as well just throw that pink one on the other side. No point in wasting it. So it gets added onto. And sorry, I shouldn't use the word wasting. It would have got saved for another layout, but like, just pop it in on this one. Who cares? Roll with it. Then they're like the same but different. And I was going to put that beautiful flower piece there, but then thought, oh, you've already cut this one. You might as well just use this one. Look, it probably isn't quite as nice. I will give you that. Because the flowers are kind of going in the wrong direction. I cut the good vibes only bit off because it worked. It'll work on its own later on. But yeah, I just decided I'm not going to use a whole new different piece of ephemera. I'm just going to put that piece there. It looks fine. I probably preferred the pot of flowers, but at the time I was like, no, that's cool. Use the piece you got. Go roll with it. Go, go, go. Yeah, no worries. So I'm just popping the 3 up on foam because I do want it to stand up a little bit because, you know, that's what these photos are about, the 3-year-old birthday. And I initially put it up the top of the photo, over top of the cacti, and then realised you can't see it very well because it's exactly the same colour as the cactus. So I pull it off, tear a little bit of that pink, so then therefore it will need to go directly on top of that pink so that it is covering that little tear. But that's okay because you can see it a little bit better now. And I stuck that butterfly down flat, and I'm going to pop this butterfly up with some foam. So lots of dimension, lots of height, lots of layers, lots going on, lots of colour. I didn't really mean to. I didn't care about the arrows on this on that tag, but I end up placing everything so it basically covers up the arrows that were on that wood grain tag, and all you can really see is the little pop of wood grain, which, yeah, is fine by me. So I had my title pre-prepared. It was just stuck on my windowsill. So I've popped that on, Diggin BN3. They are chipboard thickers. So I did actually add some white glue behind those just to make sure they really, really stick. Now I was about to put on my Hardy Swap Colour Shine in navy and gold, and then remembered I had all these gorgeous words in the exclusive cut apart sheet. So I decided I might actually use some words. So I'm just looking through those to see what I can find. There's a pink one that says, here we go. I decided I didn't want the coloured ones. I just wanted the black ones. So I've got favourite moments, perfect day, and simply fun. And now I am splashing on my gold and my navy colour shine. And then I will call this done. I don't get any rhinestones out for this one, which is unusual for me. Usually I would have some form of enamel dots or rhinestones or something, but no, not this time. So I'm going to pull it up so you can have a close-up. I'm actually also going to mention my photos in this one. So my photos are actually printed by 2 different ways. Not intentionally. I was just showing a friend the selfie, and so printed off a photo to show her the selfie, and then my other photo was printed at Officeworks as per normal. So you can see when I put it in the glare that this photo here that I'm touching, it's kind of got a little ripple effect to it, and the other photo is completely smooth. So the smooth photo is the selfie, the ripple effect photo is the Officeworks. You can also see a slightly different colour in the brightness of my son's shirt top. You can't now because it's all glare, but in the brightness of my son's top, in the selfie, it's a really stark blue, and in the Officeworks photo, it's more of a light blue. To be honest, the selfie is probably more true to life colour in this case, but sometimes it may be a little bit overexposed, I think, on the selfie. So I hope that was a little bit of help. Please feel free to ask if you have any more questions. I hope you enjoyed watching how I back my cut files, and I hope you can stick around for another layout coming up soon. Bye everyone!